and we're starting in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. This is Amanda Radke filling in for Trent Luce on today's Roll Route. Roll Route is the program where we gather every day at this time. Well, we do it Monday through Friday anyway. And what we do when we gather is discuss the issues between rural and urban America. I'm really excited to be joined by a special guest today, Dr. Seth Severtson of Legacy Chiropractic in Mitchell, South Dakota. We're neighbors and friends, and we've had long conversations about a whole wide variety of topics. So I don't know where this conversation is going to go today, but I'm excited to find out. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Amanda. I really appreciate it. I'm excited.
Yeah. So how long have you lived in Mitchell? Because I know right away when you moved to town, you reached out and we had coffee, and I was really excited to have kind of a like-minded person move into town.
Yeah. So we've been in Mitchell about 5 years. We lived north of Sioux Falls by Del Rapids for 8 years, lived and practiced. And I'm originally from that area, just outside of Sioux Falls, the Brandon area. And so roughly 5 years ago, we moved to Mitchell. We had my wife's family farms out here, so she grew up on the family farm, and there was some health challenges that created a disruption in sort of how the farm flowed, and they needed a hand. So we decided that we felt led, like the Lord was leading us to come out and to help, and so we closed up shop in Del Rapids and moved here, and then I was helping on the family farm roughly 4 days a week, and then I was trying to practice a couple of days a week, and so splitting my time.
Well, and that reminds me, I had totally forgotten, but her brother, right, was our hired man when I was growing up. Did we have this discussion?
Yeah, I think we did briefly. I think she mentioned the other day that she may have even, you guys may have played, or she maybe babysat over there or something. I'm not sure how that worked, but yeah, like way back in the day, she's like, oh, I recognize her. So anyway.
I'll have to ask my mom and dad if they ever had her come over or see when that would have been. But all I know is I always thought he was like the coolest cowboy ever. And he was really, really fun to hang out with, but it's funny how small of a world it is, especially in agriculture.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, we're, like you said, we're neighbors now, relatively speaking, but
we're all neighbors in rural South Dakota.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so tell me about what your family does now. Are you guys still in agriculture? Tell me about your business, kind of what makes your family tick.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I mentioned, married, I've got three little boys, and we live on my wife's family's farm on one of their places there, and help out on the farm. I should say she helps out. I help out less. I was helping out really regularly for about a year and a half. I've always been involved. Maybe I'll just start here if that's okay. I've always been involved in ag. I grew up in a welding shop. My dad was a welder and just really involved in ag. And so I was a baby of the 80s. And so I got to be involved in an ag family through some of the farm tragedy, if you will, in the 80s from probably a different vantage point though. Mm-hmm. And so we've always been involved in ag. I thought I was going to feed cattle for a living. And so I went to SDSU in Brookings, and that's what I wanted to do with my life, was an animal science major. And just a big horse guy. I used to rodeo and ride bucking horses, and I wasn't very good at it. So I spent a lot of time getting bucked off horses. So I was introduced to chiropractic, and so went down to chiropractic school. And I've always been a farrier, a horseshoer, done that for 20 years. And so anyhow, just a kind of a way to blend my passions together, the ag world and healthcare, chiropractic and stuff. So, so graduated chiropractic school, and then we launched into practice and did that, like I said, for roughly 8 years over in Del Rapids, and then moved here to Mitchell about 5 years ago to help on the farm, and just realized that, being on the farm on a daily basis was not, it's not really what I was just cut out for. I was just made differently. So I love it and I value it. And after about a year and a half, just decided I need to be back in full-time practice. So went back into full-time practice, taking care of folks. And then my wife helps a little bit on the farm now, mainly in the summer. Once the cows go out to pasture, she's out checking cows and stuff. But we help out, obviously in calving season. And then I say I really do mean she helps out quite a bit. I want to be clear. I help out when I'm available, but stay busy with the practice, and I still shoe some horses. So I do that, and then I'm a believer. I get to fill the pulpit occasionally, so I preach from time to time. So yeah, I've got young boys. We used to homeschool, and then now they're all in a local school, and that's just been a really good fit for us. So
now, are the kids pretty involved on the farm?
Yes, they like the farm. I'll say it that way. So they like the farm. They like to be around it. The younger two are pretty interested in that as a lifestyle, maybe as a career someday. So yeah, they get to hang out with grandma and grandpa quite a bit. But as far as bringing a lot of work value, not yet.
I always joke with our kids because they're 7, 5, 4, and 3. I'm like, one day they're going to be super helpful. Today,
Yeah.
not that day, but one day,
Yeah.
it's coming.
Right. I'm actually I've been loosely looking around for some grass, some hay ground to rent, because I've got an old square baler, and I want to start baling square bales, simply not because I need the hay, but because I'm raising boys, and I think there's value in them riding a hay rack, and
Yes.
training them that, and maybe even learning to sell hay to somebody, or paying rent to grandpa, sort of thing. Just I don't know, there's just so many life lessons available to them that are just yeah, so hopefully this summer there can be some value that way.
Just built right in. Yeah, I would say of all the jobs that I had to do growing up on the farm, and I've had to do a lot of tough jobs, baling square bales is like every kid should have to do it, because
Absolutely.
at one point in their life, because it's always 105 degrees.
Yeah.
The wind isn't blowing, the mosquitoes are out, you're getting scratched up, you're hot, and you're throwing those bales on the worst day of the whole year. And it just kind of teaches you something that you can overcome hard things and get a job done and work together as a family. And there's some foundational lessons to be learned. And I think that's always why I like coming in to see you at the clinic, because I feel like you apply the farm boy common sense to helping us out as a family in other arenas. So do you have a lot of agricultural clients that come in, and kind of what sort of injuries or ailments are you seeing from that community?
Yeah, great question. I do. I mean, we're in, like you said, Mitchell, South Dakota. So it's rural America, right? So yeah, we take care of lots of folks that are on the farm, or a tremendous amount that are indirectly involved in agriculture, for sure. Mm-hmm. And as far as what plagues people, I'm going to say that it I wish I could be more specific, but it really does run the gamut, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously we see a lot of the lower back, the neck pain, those sorts of things, and then all the way up into even mental health issues, right? Which we've talked about in the past, and I know has been a big topic lately, which I'm super excited about. I think it's great. It needs to be brought to light. In fact, I really enjoyed your podcast. I think you did the other day. Was it Jason? Was that right?
Yeah, Jason Meadows. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. You two should meet.
Yeah. So I was thinking that exact same thing. So as he was talking, I felt like I was like, oh man, it's like those are things that I would say that I love to talk about. Mm-hmm. I ended up over on his website actually and listened to some of his podcasts, and just a really valuable resource. So to answer your question, I see just a tremendous amount of things from both the physical all the way up to the mental health aspect. And I would say that's maybe what, I don't know if it makes me unique or just my vantage point is, for me, that health is so holistic that you can't separate them. Mm-hmm. Like somebody comes in with, let's say they come in with headaches and migraines and neck pain, that sort of stuff. You can't separate what's going on in their physical health from their mental health, mm-hmm. Because obviously we're interconnected. And so really I say that because my bent in taking care of people is to just literally take care of the whole person. And I mean that truly, right? Like we want to tend to people's physical, mental, chemical, spiritual needs. And hopefully that's valuable for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've come into your office and I've said, I'm a wreck. I hurt everywhere. But your first question is like, well, what's going on in your life? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm super stressed out and we've got
Yeah.
all this stuff going on the farm. And plus I got these 4 kids and trying to homeschool them and just all these things. And
Yeah.
definitely see how that manifests into, sore shoulders and back and a sore neck and then headaches. And I do agree that it's very interconnected. And when we come back from this break, Seth and I are going to talk about mental health and agriculture, and hopefully you can provide us some solutions for tackling that hot topic. Are you a parent or teacher looking for accurate resources to teach kids about where their food comes from? Consider checking out my books at amandaradke.com. These stories highlight the men and women who provide us with the essentials of life: food, fiber, and energy. Beautifully illustrated by Michelle Weber, these books are a work of art and they have an educational message as well. Find them at amandaradke.com. And we're back. I'm Amanda Radke, sitting with Seth Severtson of Legacy Chiropractic in Mitchell, South Dakota. Before the break, we were just kind of talking about mental health and agriculture. And you had mentioned listening to my episode with Jason Meadows, and we had talked about mental health and agriculture then. And I'm really excited to listen to a new episode he has. It's with a young lady in agriculture who kind of had the world by the tail. From the outside looking in, she had everything going for her. And she tried to take her life on more than one occasion. And it's an important conversation because I think so often it's just kind of the elephant in the room nobody wants to talk about. And I don't know if you have seen it, but I mean, in the last 2 years with COVID, and we talk about the loss of life and we're tracking all of the COVID deaths. And internally, I just kept thinking to myself, well, what about the suicides and the rate of depression and the divorces and the childhood neglect and the drug and alcohol abuse and all of these other unintended consequences that come from shutting down a country and locking people up away from their loved ones. And so I guess, have you kind of seen that ramping up and folks coming into your clinic in the last couple of years because of these issues?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to talk straight to that. I mean, that was a huge problem, right? The last couple of years is this idea of isolation, this idea of loneliness, and I mean, there's been plenty of research published about the effect of loneliness on all-cause mortality, and like it matters. I'm always reminded of you have both research that side, and then I'm reminded of the verse that the Lord said it's not good for man to be alone, and like so fundamentally, we're designed for this connection. And again, you can't, in my opinion, you can't separate that mental health need from a physical health issue. Again, a low back issue and a loneliness issue, and they exist inside of the same person. So yeah, absolutely, we've seen just stress related issues become more and more rampant for people. Yeah.
And so obviously you play a unique role when people come to see you, but I guess, where do you start? Does it start with an adjustment, or what advice do you give to people that are, I mean, it's obviously a mental health issue, not just a physical ailment.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So if I guess I need to talk probably a little bit philosophically here, if that's okay. Just because it gets difficult, without the patient sitting in front of me and knowing their uniquenesses and what specifically is going on. Hard to give me practical solutions, but I feel like so much of what I do, or the way I think, is how do I think first? How do I think correctly about this problem? Because if I can think correctly about this problem, then I can have right affections, if you will, and then I can have right action steps. And so where you start with people is I think beginning to help them think correctly about their health, and that is fundamentally that they're interconnected, and that they need to realize that the issues that they have going on in their health and their life are not compartmentalized. And so they need to be aware of that first and foremost, because often someone will come into me and want me to, hey, can you help me fix this problem so that I can get back to my life that's broken, that's not working for me.
Right.
And like, yeah, I can help fix up your neck, but like, unless you address the cause of the rest of this, right, this thing's going to come back. And so I think first, just awareness that matters. That things as small as how well you're sleeping matter, right? Things like how much water you're drinking or not drinking matter. How much people are medicating or not medicating with be it prescription medications or alcohol, like those things matter. And they have huge implications into both your mental and your physical health. And so I think when I think about these problems, for me, it has to become this sort of like holistic solution. We need to attack it both chemically, like quite literally, like, how's your diet? Are you eating trash? We know that's going to affect your gut health, which affects your brain health.
Mm-hmm.
How's your physical health? Are you finding time to just get out and move, even, right? Even simple things, going for walks. How, the health benefits of a 30-minute walk they're astounding.
Mm-hmm.
People would even just commit to that. You think about that in physical health, then you think about it in terms of mental health. Like, are you finding ways to connect with other people?
Mm-hmm.
If you begin to read, articles about agriculture and mental health, one of the issues is just simply the isolated lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that matters. You have to connect with other people. And then, of course, this gets a little bit difficult to talk about on radio, but I'm a spiritual person. Like, I think you have to tend to those matters as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
So to tease those things out, I just begin to ask questions. Does that answer your question at all?
It totally does. And I honestly feel personally attacked, because as you're rolling through this list, I'm like, oh, I don't sleep too much because I'm trying to do a lot. I drink a lot of coffee. When's the last time I drank a glass of water? I have a lot of stress in my life. And now we're into calving season and breeding season and planting season. So you're eating on the run. And I know I'm not the only one that probably is like, I need to.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. And I'll put myself there too. Like we're the same way, right? I mean, we're, helping on the farm. So we're helping out with calving. We've got 3 kids. I've got a small business. And so life is just go. And I totally understand. And so I think when I get a moment of clarity, I've got to step back and then think about, because I think the elephant in the room is this. Then, you step back, we talk about stress, we talk about mental health, and often our answer is, well, you just need to slow down. And if I was to play devil's advocate against myself, I think I would say something like, well, I can't just sit around all day, right? I mean, me slowing down is not going to decrease my stress. It's going to increase my stress. I've got things that have to happen,
Things to do list keeps piling up.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think it is a conversation and I have a good friend and I have this conversation all the time, is how much is enough?
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at some business expansion here, and that's the question before us. It's not the details. It's not the balance sheet. It's not the, can we get it done? It's, at what point is enough?
Yep.
Like, at what point is contentment on the balance sheet? Jason talked about putting yourself as a human asset on your balance sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And at what point is contentment, that's different for every family, because you have to answer the question, are we in a season, or are we in, like, is this just the way life is?
Yep.
Yeah.
And trying to implement, that's where I'm at, trying to implement systems to streamline my life, and also trying to prune away things that don't matter, because I hate that feeling of being a hamster on a wheel where it's go, 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 go. And we're chasing after something, but what is it that we're chasing after? And are we missing what's right in front of us in that pursuit of what's down the road? And so I struggle with that because I'm total workaholic. I always feel like there's more I could be doing. But then I don't want to look back on these years and this season of my life where my kids are really little and they're just experiencing life and fun. And so I have to slow down and say, no, this is what matters right now. What's right in front of me. So I've done some impulsive things as a parent the last couple of years to try to cheer us all up, because COVID has been really hard on families. So in 2020, everything was locked down. We weren't even going to church. So it was just impacting us. And one day I said, we need therapy goats. We need goats. So we drove to Chamberlain and we picked up these goats. And it was just a fun memory now that we have of this time that we were shut down and we did something totally silly and not practical. And I did it again. I was at an FFA chapter banquet here over the weekend in Nebraska, and they had this big auction, and I brought home a half a dozen ducks. And my husband's like, did you think this through at all? And I said, absolutely not, but look how excited everybody is. And it was something just totally silly, did not add to the cattle operation, did not help the business, but it was just fun and something that we could do together as a family. So I guess my question to you is what does your family do to kind of lighten the mood and make memories together and do things just for the fun of it?
Yeah, great question. So I wish I was more fun. I'll say it that way, first of all.
I'm pretty boring too. It's okay. I'm just kidding. You're not boring.
We we have horses, and we do enjoy our time outside. My oldest son is big into just being out in the trees and hunting and taking his bow or his pellet gun out there and just shooting at targets, that sort of stuff. But we've found a tremendous amount of enjoyment in just taking local trips, right? Just really, really close, short weekend. We like to camp, that sort of stuff. But recently we finally committed to pulling the plug on the TV, spending some really focused time just in the living room, just letting life unfold, letting these conversations unfold. We play silly games like guess the animal, and just try to connect, because I think if you remember all the way back to COVID, right, we learned all these lessons in COVID about, man, life is great when we pare it back. Isn't this, I'm playing catch again with my kids, and then it was like a whiplash effect. Like once everything came back online, it's like, oh yeah, we've got to catch up for a year and a half.
Got to be busy. We're going to take a quick break because I love this conversation. I want to talk about it more, but Hey friends, the saying goes that freedom doesn't come free. And without the brave men and women serving our country to protect our freedoms and liberties, everything that we love and hold dear in this country would be for naught. So to thank the troops, would you consider buying them a steak? Check out the All-American Beef Battalion. Since 2007, the late Bill Brody and his team of volunteers have served over 400,000 steaks to the troops and their families as a way to say thank you. Learn how you can get involved and support this organization by checking out steaksfortroops.com. We were talking about things that we like to do to blow off steam and relax. And I was noticing a common theme of all the things you rattled off and then I listed it. It was two things: being outside in the fresh air and enjoying time together with the people we love. And I think if we all got back to those basics, our mental health would be so much better and stronger. But you highlighted perfectly the challenge. Once kind of COVID went away, we rushed to just jump right back into our old habits of go, go, go and doing all these extra things. I guess, how do we reclaim just that, what made that time when everything shut down kind of a good thing? How do we keep hold of that?
Yeah, great question. I think it just comes back to a conversation of what are your values as a family? And we named our clinic Legacy because that was really the premise is what kind of legacy are we leaving? What are we passing on to our kids? What kind of life do we want to build into them? Because it comes down to a conversation of values, right? I mean, there are going to be families that are they're going to be busy and they're going to be together, and that's just sort of their life. That's their value. It doesn't create an extra stress on them because that's just who they are fundamentally. And so I do think it comes down to a conversation of what are your shared values? Because ultimately, if we're going to talk about stress is a perception. Right? It's a perception of what's going on around you. You and I could each have an event happen to us, and if it's stressful or not really depends on how we perceive it. So, for example, going out to check heifers in the middle of the night might not be stressful to you. It gets to be stressful to me, right? It's just a perception of what's going on. So I do think, to answer your question, in my opinion, it comes back to shared values, like what matters to us. When my wife was homeschooling, we said she was at home a lot, obviously through those years. And that means that we're saying yes to this, which in contrast means we're saying no to something else, right? Yeah. We're because this is a shared value right now. We're saying yes to doing less at night. That means we have to say no to something else, and those things are fine. I think you have to be comfortable with that, but again, you have to define that life. What are you trying to chase? Yeah. And I remember Jason mentioned an author named Jordan Peterson in a book in there, and I'm not going to quote Jordan verbatim, but he talks about this idea of can you craft a life? Can you build a life that makes the sort of the suffering worth it? The trials that you're going to have to go through worth it. And I think it comes down to that, and that's again we have to talk a little bit philosophically because I can't answer that for different families, but that's where I go with it.
Yep. And you talked about that shared values, and that's what I appreciate about you, because I think we have a lot of the same shared values, that we care about our faith and our family, care about agriculture. We care about maintaining our freedom so that we can have businesses and, be sovereign and independent and take care of our own. And so I'm constantly rattling through that checklist of, does this fall in the box? Because so much of what we do as a society, sorry to say, but it's kind of because everybody is doing it. And almost COVID made me pause and step back and say, am I doing this just because I think it's something we should be doing, or I grew up doing it, so of course I would sign my kids up for this? And I've realized for the most part, a lot of the stuff just doesn't matter. But what has mattered, I guess, for my family, you talked about unplugging the TV and sitting around the living room. We've done the same thing. I mean, I saw that the TV was becoming addictive. I didn't like most of the programs that were on there that my kids could stumble upon. I felt like I had to watch them like a hawk to make sure that, that agendas weren't seeping into our home, that I would have to, counteract. But what's been most powerful is we've just really committed to supper time at the dinner table. I make a big fuss out of it. We light candles, we pray, we ask each other about our day. And it was kind of hard for us to do at first. And I thought, this is, we'll just eat on the run. We're out in the field or in the cattle yard or whatever. But the days that we skip it, the kids say, Mom, why aren't we doing fancy supper tonight? And I think, oh, wow, they do like this time where we just slow down enough just to eat a meal together. And that seems to be like a rare thing anymore in society.
Yeah, absolutely. I made a post about this on our clinic Facebook page not terribly long ago, about just a picture of our dinner table. And it was like, I don't always get it right, but this is something that we do commit to on a regular basis, is this idea of having dinner together. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned it. We just recently, just this weekend, had a speaker at church, and he was, one of the things was talking about being a good father, but I think we can say good parent in general. And he was using the example of Job, and he was talking about, Job was obviously this big farmer, lots of cattle and sheep and lots of land. And then he mentioned about his influence in his kids and about how his children were about him, was the verse that he used. And this idea of, sharing common time, so important. Yeah,
absolutely. And you mentioned your faith and that it's a huge, huge foundation for you. I guess kind of tell me how that plays a role for you as being a dad, a business owner, a member of a community. How does that kind of shape how you interact with folks?
Yeah, so I think it's just fundamentally who I am. If I was to tell you about who I am, like that is, I believe that my identity in Christ is fundamentally who I am. And that ultimately, to say it a little bit morbid, none of us get out of here alive.
Right. We're all terminal.
Exactly. Right. Like I want people to feel better, and I want them to heal, and all those things are true. And at the same time, like, none of us make it out alive. And so it has to be about this next life, right? It has to be about the eternal value of these things and what we're trying to do, because ultimately in my opinion, we're all just trying to get each other across the finish line, and that matters, how we walk hand in hand across the finish line, how we help people transition in life. Just to think about in agriculture, there are seasons of life. There's a time to plant, right? There's a time to harvest, and there's a winter time. There's a time of transition, and that's true in your physical life. It's, we see that modeled in nature. We see it modeled in agriculture and in spiritual life as well. So it's important.
Yeah. I struggle with this because I feel like I need to be more and more vocal about my faith as, Christianity is being kind of ushered out as a society. And I worry about, my kids having to worship in secret one day because it's just not an acceptable view. It's not in schools, it's not in business. It's like Jesus isn't welcome anywhere. And so I've almost felt like I have to push back against that even harder. And, I've lost writing opportunities and speaking opportunities because of that. But yet I just want to show my kids that at the end of the day, we serve an audience of one, and he is the one that matters most. And so that's how we're going to live our lives, even if we're ostracized from whatever society or organizations. Have you seen some pushback like that, or do you share those concerns, or I guess how do you look at it in reflection of today's world?
Yeah, I'll say I think about it a lot, and I definitely share those concerns. And so, just a little bit full circle here. I think that's why a conversation about your values matter, because ultimately, like, what am I building into my kids with my daily activities and my routines? Am I distracting them with things that are going on in the world, or am I using those things to build values into them, right? So you can do that, right? You can bring your kids alongside of you at work and on the farm, and build those values into your kids, as opposed to it being a distraction, if that makes sense. So yeah, absolutely. I see it all the time. I share those concerns. I don't know that I've lost, maybe I've lost opportunities because of it. I don't know that I have. But I think we as believers and people in this country, we've shared hundreds of years of relative low risk for our faith. It's not had to cost us a lot.
Right.
And I think we're starting to see maybe a shift to that. And it does bring the emphasis back to on how we manage our life and how we steward this world well, and what testimony we're going to leave. Absolutely.
Yeah. The world, I always tell my kids, the world is really harsh. It's hard. And they've seen that firsthand in the last couple of years with COVID and schools shutting down and churches shutting down, and, people just going through hard things, and then seeing their mom and dad be stressed out at times too. Yeah. And I always reminded myself, like, I want to set the example of how we handle stress, and me alone, I can't handle stress by myself, but I can handle it because I know my faith will help guide me through it. And so I kept trying to bring it back to our faith that, we don't have all the answers right now. The news is really scary. We're trying to navigate this uncertain world. But we're not going to act in fear. We're going to walk with faith, and we're going to stand firm in that faith, no matter which storms come our way. And in one conversation I had with the kids, China was on the news, and it was talking about the underground Christian church or community there in China. And my daughter, she's very inquisitive on stuff like this, but she was like, well, what do you mean they pray in secret? She didn't know why. And so I kind of explained it to her, and that's really stuck with her. And she said, like, aren't we so lucky that we can pray openly and we can have our Bible, Mom, and it's like, so I want my kids to appreciate that it's not something we should take for granted, because there's people all around the world that have to hide, their true values and what they believe in, simply to survive. Or, on the other hand, they're willing to lose everything, even their lives, for standing up for what they believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember a time early on in 2020, I think it was May or something. It was early on. And so I've always likened it to something going, thump in the night, right? Like you wake up and you're like, what was that? And nobody knows what it is. And so you flip all the lights on and you grab your baseball bat or whatever, and you walk
right.
You realize that it was a cat that had gotten in, and you realize, okay, well, I'm cool. Okay. So that's different. And it was early on in all of that, when everything was just coming to a head. And I had a tremendous amount of anxiety, because I didn't know what the answer was. Like, or everyone's closing. Do we close? Like, what are we supposed to do? And I just had this sense that that if I talked about, shutting my doors, it wasn't going to be for a week, that it was going to be for a really long time. And I was watching the news, and I remember I was journaling all the numbers, because I felt like it was historic, and it was starting to consume me. And I was getting fearful, to be frankly honest. And I remember just having this sense, I think I was talking to my mom about it. Obviously great Christian woman in my life. And I think she just said, like, you're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to decide what you're doing here with your brain, because you cannot live with one foot in each world.
Right. Living with faith, not fear. We'll be back after this short break with Seth Severtson. This episode of the Radke Report was sponsored by amandaradke.com. My friends, I have a ton of stuff on my website for you to check out for the entire family, from beautiful turquoise jewelry to great educational books to farm swag for mom, dad, the kids, grandma and grandpa, and everybody in between. We have Western gifts and items that the entire family will love. Check it out at amandaradke.com and use code Radke Report to save 10% on your next purchase. Thanks for listening. So before the break, you were talking about living in both worlds. Can you kind of finish that story?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so I was just, I was visiting, I believe, with my mom, and just having a lot of anxiety about what to do in our clinic and our business, and what do we do? And she said, you can't live with one foot in each world. Like, you're just going to have to sort of pick a horse and ride it, right? Like, what are you going to do here? You're going to turn inward, or you're going to move forward in faith? And And I remember that being almost a deciding moment and a deciding prayer in my life. It's like, I'm just going to choose to move forward here. I don't know ultimately the answers. I don't know how this is going to pan out. But I'm going to move forward in faith in this, in what's going on here, and just trust that there's something else for me, something else in charge. I think that's just a small example, but I mean, we do that every single day, right? I mean, if you're in the Midwest right now, it's dry, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately to live with one foot in each world, I mean, is mentally exhausting. And what's going to happen, and what do we do? And ultimately it's almost this, I'm going to have a decision here. Whatever it is, I'm going to choose a horse, I'm going to ride it, and I'm going to have faith that there's something else. It's not just faith in humanity or faith in mankind, that sort of thing. Not faith that things are just going to pan out, but faith in the Lord that he's got something here, that ultimately he's in control.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's fundamentally what mental health is. I mean, I've had pretty significant bouts with anxiety and depression. I've got my own battles, and they fundamentally come down to this: like, what am I choosing to do here? How am I choosing to move forward? Whether it's with my kids or my business or the farm, whatever it might be, is what do I believe is ultimately in control of here? Kind of this perspective of this eternal perspective, if you will.
Right. Absolutely. I've had that same discussion with my husband, because I'm just a type A, kind of a worrier, like to be in control of things. So it was, what if this happens, or what if this happens? And his comment was, if you're already thinking about what's going to happen and you're cowering in fear, making a decision, then they've already beat you. They've already won. And so, I've got to keep moving one foot in front of the other. And it was the same with the grass. It's been so cold and then so windy, and you can just see the dirt flying. And it's just, you start freaking out because you think, well, where's the grass going to come from? And how much is hay going to cost? And my husband said, you either trust that the Lord's going to bring the rain or you don't. But what are we going to do about it? We can pray about it, and we can make the decisions that are best for this moment and try to be responsible and frugal to make ends meet. But worrying about it and living in fear does nothing but give you stress, and then give you backaches, and then having to call you to fix you up.
Yeah. My wife's that same way. I tend to be the really emotional one in the relationship, and she's very steady and very even and very, like, it's just very logical to her. And one of the things I've had to learn is that, my emotions are not the seat of my reality, right? That emotions come and go, and they can inform us about what's going on. But ultimately that's not how things are. And I have to work really hard to get a hold of my emotions. That's why for me, I talked, a little bit earlier, just philosophically, it's so important for me to think correctly about a situation, whether it's, again, in business or in family or in emotional health. Because if I can think correctly, then I can have correct emotions. And if I can have correct emotions, then I can have correct actions. But if I'm letting my emotions run the show, like, everything else can be a disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that's kind of society right now. It's all about what we feel instead of what's right in front of us. And it often seems, I feel like maybe conservatives do a poor job of this, because I myself just find myself focusing on the practical things. Like, okay, people are super stressed out, but what logistically can I focus on? Okay, the price of food has gone up astronomically. The price of fuel is crazy high. People are living paycheck to paycheck. That exasperates into all kinds of other issues. But I'm in agriculture, so surely I should be able to solve the food and the energy issues and all those essentials of life, so then people can tackle all the other stressors they have. But it seems like that message is often received negatively, because people are thinking, well, you're not taking care of, people's emotions. But I feel like being secure in all of those essentials does tie into how you feel emotionally as a person too. I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, for me, it's so hard to compartmentalize, right? Because it is your mental and emotional health. It's not its own thing in isolation, right? It's such a big component of your physical health and your spiritual health and what you're putting into your body. And so I tend to agree. I think we're absolutely on the same page.
Well, you have a lot of great posts on your social media. I see word on the street is that you've purchased the local newspaper because you want to be like Elon Musk when you grow up. Yeah. I appreciated that. And I bring that up because seems like our means of communication is always changing. I guess, have you seen any censorship on social media or anything like that because of your views? Are you seeing any suppression?
Yeah, so I should briefly say I kind of forgot to mention about this. We've talked philosophically here, but I do want to bring some practical help to folks.
Awesome.
We're at the beginning of launching this course, kind of where we talk about this intersection of physical and mental and emotional health, and just things that you can do. And so, feel free to email me, I guess, if you're interested in knowing more about that. It's called legacylifecourse@gmail.com. Just a real simple email address you can get a hold of me at. Can give you some practical application, practical videos, those sorts of things.
Awesome.
But to talk, just to answer your question, I've not seen a lot of censorship on me specifically, and I'll tell you why in a second. But I have all over the map. There's lots and lots of folks that have been censored. I've seen it obviously in my friends, a lot of my colleagues. I've pretty good friends with some people that have had real significant heat come down on them in the chiropractic world, and be, in fact, I was in conversation with one of them that's been very vocal, had several things go viral, and he's like, hey man, like it looks, I appreciate the, the support and everything, but he's like, it's come at a real cost. I mean, my house has been vandalized, my car has been vandalized. Like, we've taken heat as a family, some real physical issues. So yeah, it's unfortunate that there's that much hate in the world. That there's that much censorship. I've not gotten a lot of it, and the reason why is I chose to be on my Facebook page, at least I chose to not be controversial about it for one simple reason. I just valued relationships so much, and I wanted any conversation that I had to be in the context of a relationship. Like I wanted, to put things out there, but then I wanted that person to come in and sit knee to knee and face to face with me, and us to have a real conversation, because I think the context of what you're saying changes, right? I mean, it's super easy for me to be inflammatory on a keyboard, but if I was to sit knee to knee with that person, just how much grace and compassion I would have for the context of their life, and I think we would actually have a better outcome. And so I didn't get censored a lot because I came at it from a relationship standpoint. So.
Yeah, I think that was a good play, because and I should give you credit, because when we were sick, I feel like as a society, we always think that, oh, we got to get a pill, we got to take something, medicine to fix it. Whereas as a mom, I've always just instinctively looked at it from, okay, what's the root cause? Is it sleep? Is it
Absolutely.
diet? Is it what's going on that we can fix first? And so I appreciate it, because we were super down in this winter, and you were willing to come see us, where I feel like some health practitioners maybe wouldn't have, or would have approached us in a much different way. And you didn't treat us like lepers. You treat us like human beings who were in trouble. And so, yeah, I really value voices that are willing to go against the grain a little bit and kind of stick their necks out when they're being pressured to do otherwise. So on that note, tell us a little bit about this program that you're launching and kind of what it all entails.
Yeah. So the idea of the course or the program is again, there's these aspects of health, if you will, right? There's a physical aspect, there's a chemical aspect, there's an emotional aspect. And so I want to give voice to those. I want to give some practical applications, some knowledge about your own body and how we live in this world, that sort of stuff. But I think the unique vantage point maybe that I have is that I really do come at it that there's an intersection of these all, if you will, and I want to be able to speak to that, because I think right now one of the problems in healthcare, frankly, is that it's all compartmentalized, right? You have a back doctor, you have a knee doctor, you have a stomach doctor, you have a brain doctor, and like no one talks about the intersection of all of them. And I just want to be able to give voice to that, this sort of intersection again of the mental health, the spiritual health, chemical and physical. And so it's going to be video resources. I'm hoping if it's something that people enjoy and they're social media people, that there will be a Facebook group alongside of it. It's just a coursework and memberships for those folks.
Yeah. So, and give us the sign up information one more time.
Yep. So the email is legacylifecourse@gmail.com. And you can just email me if you're interested. I'm not going to spam you. I'm not going to send you a billion things. It's just, hey, if you're interested when we launch it, I'll let you know.
All right. With 1 minute left, I know we're approaching planting season for a lot of people. They're going to be stuck in a tractor any practical tips for keeping from getting really stiff and sore and not in good shape through that season?
Yeah, absolutely. So, those are so difficult because farmers, you go from sitting, right, and then you have to get out and maybe you've got to load a bunch of seed, and so it's like hours of sitting and then really intense moments of physical labor. And so I think that the three things I would say is, one, you've got to use some caution in the first couple minutes when you get out of the tractor. You're quite literally, your ligaments and your muscles are not in a place to lift heavy and do a lot of bending, twisting, that sort of stuff. So maybe immediately when you jump out, it'd be really helpful if you took a couple of minutes, walk around the tractor, check your planner, like just maybe do the equipment check first before you jump into a bunch of physical work. Don't underestimate hydration. People should be drinking more water. It helps with a tremendous amount of mental clarity, muscle soreness, and frankly, it gets you up having to go to the bathroom, which gets you from out of a sitting position, which is really helpful.
Yeah.
As well. And then obviously stretching, right? I mean, we all know it, but very, very few of us actually do it. I think if people are to routinely engage in stretching, it can go a long way prevention-wise.
That's great. Well, these are some helpful tips, and I really appreciate your time today and your wisdom.